Hey, everybody, welcome to another episode of Think Your Way to an Epic Life. And we thank you so much for sharing your most valuable asset with us. And I promise you today, even if it's not you, listening to this is going to be so worth your time, because this isn't just a podcast today. This could be absolutely life-changing for you or someone that you love very dearly. All of us have had times in our lives when we've been in pain, and I mean serious physical pain, serious mental pain. And the lady that I'm bringing on today was in pain for decades. We're going to get into that. And she has found a way to live a life that has taken her from the horrendous pain into a life of joy. And when you see her in just a second, when I bring her on, her smile will just knock you out. And she obviously is not in pain now. And she's here to help all of us learn how she did that. Meera Ishaya is a monk, you guys, and I can't wait to find out what that was like getting into. We're just going to have a blast today. So welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you, Kara. It's wonderful to be here. Yeah.
You came all the way from the UK. This is pretty exciting. Where in the UK are you located?
Yes, I'm just northwest of London in a county called Hertfordshire, which is very beautiful, but I'm kind of close to London as well, which is really cool.
Oh, that is kind of cool. Yeah, you want to go to London, you can go visit her. That's kind of cool. So, your life seems now to be a life of serenity. So, can you kind of tell me what brought you to this point? What was the pain about?
Yeah, so I mean, my whole life was kind of about pain, really. More kind of like sickness and illness. Like as a child, I was always ill with ear infections and sore throats, and kind of one thing after another, really. And I think I kind of began to like that because I got attention when I was ill. So it kind of became this thing where, it was the way I kind of knew I was loved. So it kind of got a little bit dysfunctional. And I think then it kind of became this monster, kind of grew and grew and grew. And then I stopped losing the choice. It wasn't like I wasn't seeking love anymore. It was just my body was really starting to malfunction in so many physical ways, from mechanical ways, to having asthma. I still wear glasses, although my prescription's less than it was. And I ended up in long-term chronic pain. I had ME in between that as well. So I've kind of danced around quite a lot of different physical stuff. And when you have all of that going on too, you have mental torment and you have emotional pain as well. So when I talk about pain, what I'm really meaning is suffering. Like we're always going to have pain, but it's that when and suffering for me is a reaction. Like we've learned to respond in a certain way, and that's just a learned habit and can be retrained, and that's where the freedom comes in, and that's where we can have peace. I still have the condition I got with the birth of my second child, who's now 20. It can still kind of flare up sometimes where I'm not able to walk, and it's called symphysis pubis dysfunction. So it's a fairly rare condition, and it kind of leads to the ligament at the front of the pelvis just not operating properly. So I can't lift my legs, I can't walk, and it's excruciatingly painful. Or it used to be. When I get the flare-ups now, because I've changed my relationship with obviously I still get the body symptoms and sensations, but I've changed my relationship. I don't resist it. I don't battle with it. I allow it to be there. So there's no pain now, which is really bizarre, actually, when I'm, left not being able to walk, and then there's no pain, because before I thought, well, that's what was causing the pain. And this is where the journey has been very fascinating for me, actually. And my mum doesn't always understand this, but I always say I'm so grateful for this, because it's been a learning tool. It's been so horrible and so demoralizing that it pushed me, like it's give up, and I don't know if you read the beginning of my first book, Peace or Pain, but I do talk about I don't want to live anymore. I actually attempt suicide, and that actually was a catalyst for me to absolutely surrender. It's like I don't want to live anymore, I'm done. I surrender, I give up. But not putting up with just an absolute release. And in that, it kind of opened up an experience for me that was, almost like time stood still. Like there was such a depth of peace and stillness and space that was beyond pleasure, if you know what I mean. because it was just so much, I was just being in that moment. There was just a state of absolute presence and awareness, and there was absolutely no suffering. So I kind of went from, being in absolute torture, not wanting to live, to transported, what it seemed like, into a whole nother dimension. Obviously nothing changed. It was just my perception that changed, and my awareness opened up, and I kind of actually just came back into my natural state of pure awareness. And that's where I've got to see what was possible. And I thought, if I can have this at the lowest point in my life, well, do you know what? It's got to be possible, And obviously it faded, but that, for me was an experience of like, such a recognition that, there is a different way to live life. There's a whole, different experience I can have, and nothing actually needs to change on the outside. This is an inner experience. We do experience the world through how we are, through the filters of the mind, through our belief system. And so for me, what I've recognized and am now able to do is I can have that pure experience, just fully attentive, present right here, right now, with no thoughts telling me how to experience my body, the world, other people, situations. So it's a pure, clear experience.
Okay, I got to unpack that just a little bit. You were done living and you attempted suicide, and at that point, when you did the attempt, is when you felt the bliss?
Yeah. So I mean, I picked up a knife to cut my wrist, and my husband caught me. So that's how it got stopped. And he was holding our son in his arms, and it was just really, my son made kind of this little gurgle, sound. He was like, I don't know, 18 months, 2 years old, something like that. And my eyes just flicked up following the sound, because I had kind of been really like just focused in on the knife in my wrist. I was just holding it to my wrist, and that's all I was looking at. And my husband was like, trying to talk me down, and I just, none of that reached me. But then this little sound that my son made, just, I think it was just the purity of it. My eyes just went to it, and I just looked into his eyes, and that's when everything just changed. So my husband quickly took the knife off me, and for me, I was just utterly fascinated, because like, well, what is this? Like, right, I'm exactly in the same place, that my outside world is, nothing's changed, and yet my experience utterly changed. And so it wasn't too long after that I started to then do lots of like workshop, hopping, looking for answers, looking for different modalities, like, what can I do? And I found loads of stuff. It's like the universe opened up and went, here, try this. And they were all amazing. But even that got a little hollow after a while, because it's like I had an amazing time on the workshop, but it kind of didn't last. It was like so temporary and fleeting. And I thought, really, what I then came to the point of, I want to have a sustainable experience. I want to replicate it in my everyday life. I want to be able to choose for it and become empowered, and that's when I came across the Ishayas. It's like the saying, when you're ready, the teaching appears. And I was like, yeah, come on, universe, what have you got for me? I want the, anything and everything that's possible, and I want to be able to do it. I don't want to have to look to someone else to do it, and that's what I love being able to do, is teach others to do the same. So you are kind of helping them, but it's more like I share my experience and I walk alongside them, rather than sometimes we look at teachers as, or, experts as, they'll save us, or we worship them, or whereas for me, I think it's sharing the experience of what is possible, so others can go for it as well,
Wow. Okay. So how did your family feel when you told them, I want to be a monk?
Well, I mean, it's not kind of like a statement you just come out with. I learned these techniques, and my husband was just like, it's what she does. She explores weird and wonderful. I mean, I did shamanism and all sorts, crystals, loads of weird and wonderful stuff. And so my husband was like, it's just one more thing. But then he started to see me change. And all of a sudden the reactivity dialed down, and I became probably much nicer to live with. People tend to notice. I did notice my experience change, but I think others around me noticed it sooner than I did, because we're with the experience, you see. And so very, very quickly, my family were like, yeah, you go do your thing in that room, because you're much nicer. much nicer when you've been in there, and so yeah, so for him he then learned the techniques. Now he practices them on and off. He's not dedicated like me, but when he does it, I see the difference in him. And so really it kind of was just this gradual thing that opened up into me using the techniques. And as the experience changed for me, and my husband learned, and friends and family learned as well, because they saw the change in me, which was quite dramatic, I think, really, for them, because I was a boiling pot of rage. Often I would fly off the handle very easily. You might not, I'm not at all like that now, and that energy is not even there now, which is kind of shows what's possible. But also I was massively anxious, like very, very fearful, and very introverted. I would have labeled myself as a shy person. I wouldn't have been doing something like this, just absolutely no way. And I could often bottom out into depression as well, and so yeah, I think there's been quite a big change. And it just became a long, as my own experience changed, that I'm like, I want to share this with others. It's like the more you help yourself, like the more it just naturally wants to flow out into the world. And I'm like, people need to know this. And I was still quite shy. I remember when I turned up to my training course, which is a 6-month course, which the majority of is stabilizing your own experience, so you can teach from that. And then the last part of the course is the teacher training. But I kind of rocked up, and they kind of called me like a little mouse, like I was terrified to speak and share, and totally different to how I am now. And that's where I kind of realized that so much of what we might even call our personality is actually learned behavior. It's not actually us. It's the way we've learned to be in a world that's very stressful. Kids learn from adults, don't they? They don't necessarily do what they're told, but they copy the adults around them. So my mum was anxious, I became anxious. It's kind of like what happens when we're growing up. We do look to the outside world to inform us how to behave, how to speak, how to act, as well as what we're told to do and not do. It's what's demonstrated to us. And that's the exciting part. As I've changed and I demonstrate a different experience now, then that enables others to do the same for themselves.
Ooh, okay. So, okay. Ed Milet is one of my heroes. I love the man. And he says, the person that you can help is the person you used to be. You are living proof of that. You used to be someone completely different, and now, like, it's absolutely crazy. So it took you 6 months to become an Ishaya monk?
Yeah, that's the typical training time. Really just to deepen your own experience of it, and to release the old programming. Like, we are very identified with the thinking mind and our belief system. So it's like what we call the ego. And we all know we have an ego self. Well, that ego self, it's just a bunch of thoughts. All it is a collection of thoughts. And if you look up the ego in the dictionary, for example, it says the idea or belief you have about yourself. It's just an idea, but we're identified with it. So we don't even see that there's any other way. We're so immersed in it and so entrenched in it. We can't see, that we are not that, And so, yeah, it kind of takes around 6 months, sometimes longer for some people, to kind of unpack all of that, to actually start to recognize what you were doing, how you're reacting, and start to tap into the pure awareness that you are, that still unmoving, unchanging aspect, And as you do that, then you just get such deep rest. And when you do that too, all the stuff that we've learned and taken on board, it just dissolves. It kind of has to, because it only gets maintained by us continuing to think, by us giving it attention. And as we keep diverting our attention onto the backdrop of pure awareness, so all of that stuff just naturally dissolves.
This is just amazing. So you have this incredibly busy life. You're writing books. And okay, so how you keep mentioning that you wanted to help people. How does someone get help from you? What do you help with?
So I help people to become present, to be themselves, And the kind of people come along and learn, you know, the techniques that I teach as an Ishaya monk are called Ascension attitudes. And that's what people come along. And sometimes people come along because they want better sleep. Sometimes they come along because they want to be less stressed. Sometimes they're looking for more peace. Others are looking for enlightenment, you know, and completely changing their life like I am. And I specialize in helping people who are in physical pain, which pretty much most of the time that involves emotional pain. And sometimes for some people, it might just be emotional pain, for example, that I help them with. And I think that's my speciality because that's what I've lived through. I think for me, people can tell the difference. And I'm often the go-to person in our organization for people with pain because I have lived through it. And I've recognized in so many different ways what's possible. Like the long-term chronic pain fell away as I changed my relationship. And that kind of just happened spontaneously. I didn't really look to make the changes. It just happened through starting to get a stronger recognition as an experience of who I really am, you know, rather than my belief system. And along the way, you know, I had broken ribs at one point. And so I'm like now in a world of pain and suffering again. And I'm like, I wonder if my body's damaged, but I wonder if I can change my relationship with this. Like, I know that actually we're never changing anything on the outside. We're changing our response, our reaction, and starting to just experience without the mind telling us what the experience should be. And so I'm like, I'm wondering if the mind's informing me on this. Like, am I reacting and resisting beyond, you know, what I can see? And so I started to explore, you know, and obviously when I've broken ribs, I had like 6-8 weeks of enforced rest. I actually couldn't do anything, you know. And when I was in our usual operating mode, which is often quite resistant, and there's often a lot of, you know, thinking that comes up, there's a mind-body connection. And so if there's healing happening in the body, there's more thoughts in the mind. Yeah, so the activity in the body reflects in the mind. Some people don't realize that. They might know about the mind-body connection, but, you know, if we, for example, to meditate, it's better to meditate before a meal than after one, because there's activity going on in the body as you're digesting the food. That's why sometimes on meditation retreats, that might be vegetarian food or less food, you know, and no stimulants. You know, it's not to torture people, it's to actually assist them, because then there's less activity going on and it's easier, it just makes the whole process easier. So, yeah, my exploration just kind of got quite playful in that. You know, I was in a lot of pain, but I'm just like, what's possible? And I then started to, fleetingly at first, but I had 6 weeks to practice, so it started to get, you know, more sustainable, that the suffering just absolutely fell away. And it was bizarre because it was like I could still feel the place where my ribs were broken, but it no longer hurt and there was no suffering, and it was like everything kind of loosened up and became softer. So, like, rather than feeling so winded, you know, if I leant to get my drink, I could actually do it. I had more freedom of movement. It was like bizarre, because I'm like, what is going on here? Because I had no idea it was possible until I started exploring.
Oh, okay. So someone out there they've got chronic pain, and we're going to put all of your information at the bottom so that they can click. What should they expect if they call you? What does it look like?
Well, what kind of, well, I have online courses and I do in-person courses, and so really it's getting them. So, like, some people just come along and learn Ascension, because for me that has been the foundation for changing my relationship, because you know, Ascension it's akin to meditation. A lot of meditation keeps your focus on the content. It's like a redirect of the attention. A meditation technique always directs your attention onto something, maybe watching the breath or a mantra or something like this. Ascension is probably closest to a mantra meditation, but there's a much more emphasis on the space following the technique. So there's a whole way of using the techniques, and the technique is a program of techniques rather than just one, that work with the natural tendencies of the mind and the body and take your attention directly onto the still silent backdrop. So they're mechanical, a little bit like clicking a switch, you know, like presence, silence. And then you just observe, and then you start to become more familiar with that, basically. So that's kind of one way that I help people. Another way is I have my own online courses and in-person courses to help people with pain. So I kind of do themed courses from basic meditation online, or changing your relationship with pain. I might call it pain awareness, for example, or I'm doing one this Sunday actually in person at a adult learning college in London, which is called Meditation for Pain Relief and Wellbeing. So it's kind of like the different themes really. And then on those courses, it's educating people initially. Like, you kind of need to understand the theory of it, why we're in pain, and how we change it. And then giving them the techniques, often guided exercises to start to explore in the experience, and then an ongoing technique to be able to continue in their own, on their own journey in their own time. And people pretty much have to check back in. For me, the ongoing guidance is as important, because the mind kicks back in so much, and we kind of need a little bit of help from someone who's already recognize some of the traps of the mind, so that we can navigate them more easily.
Okay. So you basically, when you said they have to check back in, the whole time I was thinking, what kind of feedback are you getting from your people? I mean, that has got to be most rewarding, the most rewarding thing imaginable, is to have someone call you and tell you the difference it made.
Yeah, it absolutely is. I feel like I'm totally living my purpose without even having tried to find it, and it looks so many different ways. Like, some people are much more open than others, but there's always some change that happens, so it's really just working with people coming from where they're coming from. So I kind of have a load of different tools and exercises that I can explore. So there's some, beginning go-to ones that I do. Sometimes they don't work for some people. So then, I try other ones, or sometimes actually new ones kind of evolve in the moment of being with that person. But for me, whether the pain completely goes, or whether for some people it's just the pain moves to another part of the body, but they thought it was locked in that area and there was something wrong with that part of the body. So for them to have the pain move has actually been, that's quite remarkable for them. And then for others, it might just look like the symptoms lessening, the intensity lessening. And that's always possible. And actually there's the odd times where it increases in intensity, but I know what's going on, so I can just talk them through it, because that can be a bit concerning for people, because we try and we effort so much. We're so used to doing that. And so we tend to apply that method, to exploring in the way I'm doing it. So I just ask them for more information as to why it's difficult, why it's hard, why it's more intense. And then we kind of, uncover what's happening, so that we can address it in with whichever tool or technique is best in that moment.
So does the 80-20 rule play a role at all in what you're talking about?
What do you mean by the 80-20 rule? I think I've heard of it, but
the 80% or 20% of your efforts give you 80% of your results.
Yeah, most definitely. And I might even say less than, like, for me, the greatest results come from just very innocently applying the techniques and not actually looking for a particular outcome. So actually, for me, the less effort you put in, the greater the changes. And it's an undoing. We're not fixing ourselves here. We're actually just tapping into the place where we're not broken. So that's part of the title of my book, discovering the unbroken you. Because I thought I was broken. A lot of people think they're broken. And, even when I had broken ribs, yes, the body was broken, but there's an awareness here that's aware of the sensation, aware of the thoughts, aware of the emotions. And when we start to come back to that as a direct recognition, a direct experience, then our experience of everything is purified, and there's not that pressure-filled, distorted experience that the mind, it distorts everything. Whatever the mind says it is, so it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, and yet it needn't be that way. So we don't have to fight with what the mind is doing. We just keep redirecting the attention. So you start to have a different experience. And then that pattern that's creating the dysfunction, the pain and the intensity, falls away by itself. We heal. naturally. The body knows how to heal. It doesn't actually need our help. It'll need rest, so we can help it in that way. And sometimes there are things we can do to soothe the symptoms and just make things easier. I still do that because when you're addressing something that's very deeply rooted, and there's some emotion involved as well, sometimes we kind of have to look after the body a little bit until we kind of get that more stable experience of stillness to be able to allow the healing to happen.
Okay, so I have a meditation teacher that I know and have done a podcast with, and he says that meditating is like a shower for your brain. Can you speak to that?
Yeah. So a mantra comes from the Sanskrit manas, which means mind, and tra, which means protection or rescue from. So a mantra protects or rescues us from the mind. And it's like bathing in silence, which is so completely cleansing. It's like we're plugging into the mains here. We're stopping the doing because we're human beings, and of course what I'm talking about doing, it's from the mind. We don't realize. I had no idea how much my mind was running the show. I knew I had lots of thoughts, but I didn't actually recognize this whole program that's like a mode of operation, and that we can come away from that. And just like you say, it's just like absolute rest and cleansing.
I watched a YouTube video with you where you had a whiteboard and you had a picture of an iceberg. Can you kind of describe what you were trying to teach in that video?
Yeah, absolutely. And I kind of present that in a couple of different ways. Sometimes I call it a thought iceberg, and sometimes I call it a pain iceberg. So when I'm teaching and helping people with pain, I call it that because that kind of helps them. But really what we're looking at is what's above the waterline is the tip of the iceberg, and the majority of the iceberg is underneath. And everything that's underneath the water is unconscious. That's the programming that's happening in the unconscious mind. And so the tip that's above, that we're consciously aware of, the thoughts that we see, they are the tip of the iceberg. And the thoughts that we see actually aren't the ones that are the problem. They're not the ones governing our experience. It's the one below the surface that we don't see, that actually we fully identify with. So there's no separation between us and them. So they totally inform our experience. So I use the example of an iceberg. And really what we're wanting to do with that is to start to dial up our conscious awareness. So there's like a sun. I always have a sun with an infinity symbol in it, in the middle of the sun. And the infinity symbol represents our conscious awareness, which is infinite, and it's unmoving and unchanging. And as we start to become more aware and attentive to that, it's like the sun becoming brighter. And when the sun becomes brighter with an iceberg, it melts. And then everything that's in the unconscious comes to the surface. Then we can address it, because you have no choice whatsoever until you are consciously aware of that which is governing your experience.
It's got to be, it's got to be like being set free from prison.
Do you know, it's even funnier than that. It's you're in a prison cell and you've got the bars in front of you and the back door's open. you're not even in a prison. It's the prison is the mind, and as long as we listen to the mind, then yes, we are stuck in that prison cell, but we're not stuck in truth. The door's open right behind us. All we've got to do is become more aware, start to allow experience to inform us rather than the thoughts governing our experience. Because when you have a different experience directly, that's has much greater impression on us, doesn't it? We can subscribe to belief systems, to concepts. We go, yes, I believe this, I don't believe that. Then you have a direct experience of something, maybe in absolute opposition to what you believe is true, and then that's not true anymore, because the experience informs you in a much more bigger picture way, like a more holistic way.
Gosh, this is I literally hate the fact that we're 30 minutes in because I want to keep going for days. This is so fascinating. I do want to go back to affirmation. Can you please tell that definition again? Because that is so powerful. I use affirmations and I never realized that I was protecting myself from my own mind by doing that.
Yeah. So I was talking about mantras rather than affirmations.
I'm sorry, mantra.
Affirmation, and it's good that you asked that, because there's a distinct difference. I used to use affirmations a lot, but the thing with affirmations is they kind of battle with your programming. Like, you'll say something and then your the ice, everything below the water level will be going, that's not true. No, it's not true. And even if you're very persistent with an affirmation, it's probably only going to really just, scrape away at a little bit of ice at the top. It's not going to make a big difference. Whereas a mantra, as I said, means rescue or protection from the mind. So we're not fighting against the mind. We're just uncovering the space of pure awareness underneath the mind. And so that then, it's like turning the sun up, so you start to see that a thought is just a thought, then you're free. A watched thought is never a problem. It's the unwatched thoughts that cause the challenges and distort our perception.
So what would a mantra be for someone in pain? Let's say that someone, for those of you that are still with us and you were just barely going to listen to this because it sounds so crazy. I'm so grateful you're here. For those people, what do they do? What's the first easy step that's not so scary?
It's coming out of your head and into your body is the first easy step for me. So not even necessarily having a mantra. You kind of just want to because you just want to actually use the most tangible thing you have. And the mind, it's like kind of a little bit wispy sometimes things are on the edge of it, whereas if you bring all your attention onto your body, particularly where there's the pain. So what I do is I guide people through it, and I say, well, where are you feeling the emotion, or where are you feeling the pain? Sometimes people with physical pain go everywhere. So I'm like, okay, so is there a central point to that pain? And then we start to get down, oh yes, it's in the chest, or it's in the stomach or the shoulder, or wherever it is. So we start to dial it down. And then, I'll say, are there any edges to it? And what's it like? Just watch it for a moment. And in watching it, their relationship starts to change with it. Sometimes they hyper focus and there's a resistance in there and it intensifies. And so I kind of guide them through coming back into the body, because the mind it gets involved. So it's just keep bringing them back into the body. And then when they just actually settle down and just watch, then that's when it starts to change. Either the symptoms dial down, or it moves to another part of the body and they're like, huh? I thought my shoulder was wrong and now it's in my knee. Like, what is going on, And so that's, for me, the most tangible, easy step that actually any of your listeners can already apply that and just watch their body for a moment.
Just pay attention to your body. Okay. Yeah. So your courses and workshops are probably the best place for somebody to start, because that's not having to have you right there with them. So it can be more anonymous.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of people start with the books because it's probably the cheapest option. And reading the book Peace or Pain, then that kind of gives you an awful lot of the background information, and then they might want to come along to the course to kind of enliven that. And I'm actually probably in January I'm going to be releasing a workbook to go with that, so that people can interact with it and start to explore. Because for me, it's all about exploring. It's about, your mind says something, you have a set experience, but it's not true. It's not as true and not as rigid as you think it is. So you kind of need to start exploring experientially to start to see a difference. So yeah, my books are probably the first place for people to just get a sense of who and what I am. I also have a Facebook group as well that people join, and I post like the workbooks. Got a card deck in the back of it, so I post those cards every Monday morning. So it starts to give people something that they can start to interact with and play with and ask questions if they want to.
Okay. And one mantra that someone could use for pain.
Yeah, so for me, the first technique I tend to give out for people for using that is you probably have heard of Om. And typically people chant it out, Om, they extend it out and it's out loud as a chant. Well, I use that to actually internalize and then team it up with a word like peace or calm. And I kind of use both of those examples. Sometimes people prefer peace and sometimes calm. So you're literally just, again, coming in and just watching the body to start with and just observing. And you might even notice space, almost like if you've got your eyes closed, there's like a space or a nothingness in front of you, a blank, the blank screen of the mind almost. And then you just watch for a moment, and then you can just gently think the mantra, Om, peace, or Om, calm. And then you let go of it and you just watch again. What am I aware of now? And then again, you just introduce it again. And then again, we watch. And sometimes it helps to watch the body. And sometimes, because some people can't even, see the space or, because there's nothing. So people are kind of looking for something. So yeah, that's a technique that somebody can use to start with, just to get going.
Very, very wonderful. Any last words of advice for our listeners?
Yeah, suffering is optional. You don't have to suffer. It's just unpacking your life in a way to see what you were doing, what you've learned, who you believe you are, and going beyond it. And you're amazing. You are absolutely amazing, every single one of you. And yeah, I just want people to start to access that directly. And that's what I'm here for in life, is to be able to help people beyond suffering so they can live the best life and kind of be, live their purpose, be why they're here on this planet. It's in a mess right now, but it's absolutely salvageable, and so yeah, I just want to help people and know that you can do this. If I did it, there's nothing special about me. If I did it, you can do it too.
I love that. And it's so true. And your passion just exudes from you. So thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for impacting so many people in such a positive way, because each one of them is impacting countless others. So
exactly. And that changes the world.
Yes.
Each one of us changes the world from an inside out job.
That's right. One way or the other. And if you don't face it and you don't deal with it, and you are one of those people and you're not even aware, and you're putting out all this negativity, it's not fair. Just look at a book. It's not going to be that expensive. Check it out and just see. So anyway, thank you so much for your time. Really, really appreciate it, and look forward to learning more from you over the years.
You're very welcome. Thanks so much, Kara. And I'll come back on anytime.
Okay, terrific. I'll take you up on that.